I remember the smell of fear most vividly. Not just my own, which clung to my skin like cold sweat despite the fragrant oils they'd bathed us in, but the collective terror of 30 women lined up in the auction house's holding room. It smelled like copper and salt, like prey animals huddled together while predators circled. We wore identical white silk gowns, the fabric so thin it felt like wearing mist, our hair arranged according to our market value. Mine hung straight and unadorned, the mark of the least desirable. The autumn rain beat against the high windows, creating shadows that danced across the marble floor. I counted the drops sliding down the glass to keep myself from trembling. 1, 2, 3. By 78, the first girl was called. She walked with forced grace toward the heavy oak doors, back straight, chin high. We all knew what awaited her: a stage, bright lights, and a room full of alpha werewolves eyeing her like meat, calculating her breeding potential. "Remember, smile, and keep your eyes down," hissed Madame Oleander, the beta woman who'd been preparing us for months. "No alpha wants a she-wolf who looks directly at him before being claimed." I nodded mechanically, though I knew it wouldn't matter for me. My hand instinctively reached for the small pendant hidden beneath my gown. A carved wooden wolf my grandmother had pressed into my palm before she died. "This belonged to your mother," she'd whispered. "When all seems lost, remember that you come from a line of women who found strength in their softness." I'd been 8 then, too young to understand what she meant. Now, at 22, I still didn't fully comprehend it, but I clung to those words like a talisman. One by one, the others were called. Some returned with flushed cheeks and wide eyes, claimed. Others came back with hollow expressions that mirrored my own expectation. Rejected, to be sent to the labor camps. As the numbers dwindled, my heartbeat quickened. Perhaps they'd forget about me. Perhaps I could slip away when they weren't looking. Lyra Blackwood. My name hit me like a physical blow. I rose on shaking legs, smoothing the silk over my hips. The other girls avoided my gaze. Everyone knew why I was here. The disgraced daughter of a once powerful pack, reduced to nothing after my father's failed rebellion. A cautionary tale. Damaged goods. "Move," Madame Oleander commanded, pushing me toward the door. The corridor felt endless, each step bringing me closer to my fate. The guards flanking me were unnecessarily large, as if they expected me to fight or flee. I'd done both in the past, but tonight I had nowhere to run. When I stepped onto the stage, the brightness momentarily blinded me. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw them. Dozens of alpha werewolves in their human forms, dressed in finery that displayed their wealth and status. Their scents mingled in the air: musk, power, aggression. My wolf stirred within me, pressing against my skin, urging me to submit, to bow my head lower. "Lot number 28, announced the auctioneer, a thin man with eyes like a hawk. Lyra Blackwood, age 22, unmated, from the former Northern Territories pack. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I kept my gaze fixed on the polished wood floor, but I could feel their stares, their judgment. The weight of my family's shame pressed down on my shoulders. Blood purity verified, but carries the disgraced Blackwood lineage. Starting bid at 50 gold pieces. 50. The other girls had started at 200, minimum. Silence fell over the room. I counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. By 15, my cheeks burned with humiliation. "Any interest at 40 gold pieces?" The auctioneer tried again, his voice betraying irritation. More silence. 30? I closed my eyes. This was worse than I'd imagined, to be rejected so publicly, so completely. "She'll be sent to the barren mines if there are no takers," the auctioneer reminded the crowd, as if anyone cared what happened to a trader's daughter. Just as he raised his gavel to declare me unsold, a deep voice cut through the silence. 500 gold pieces. The room went deadly quiet. I forgot the cardinal rule and looked up, searching for the source of the voice. In the back row, partially shadowed, stood a man taller than the others. His face was sharp angles and hard lines, his eyes like amber flames in the dim light. Even from this distance, I could feel the weight of his power, an alpha among alphas. The auctioneer gaped. I beg your pardon, Your Majesty." "Your Majesty," My blood turned to ice in my veins. Only one man was addressed that way. Kieran Silverclaw, the Alpha King who had united the 7 territories after decades of war. The man whose armies had crushed my father's rebellion. I said 500 gold pieces, he repeated, his voice like gravel over velvet. Unless someone wishes to challenge my bid, no one moved. No one dared. 500 gold pieces from His Majesty, King Kieran, the auctioneer stammered. Going once. Going twice. Sold. The gavel struck with a finality that echoed through my bones. I stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Why would the most powerful werewolf in the 7 territories want me? Was this some form of extended punishment for my family's crimes? A handler gripped my elbow, guiding me off the stage and through a side door. The small room beyond held only a desk, behind which sat a beta wolf with spectacles perched on his nose. Sign here, he instructed, pushing a parchment toward me. It transfers ownership of your person to His Majesty. I stared at the document, the words swimming before my eyes. Why would he want me? I whispered. The beta looked up, his expression unreadable. It's not our place to question the king's decisions. I signed with trembling fingers, the quill scratching against the parchment like tiny claws. Wait here, the beta instructed, taking the document and leaving the room. Alone, I pressed my back against the wall, trying to control my breathing. My grandmother's pendant felt heavy against my chest. I pulled it out, running my thumb over the carved wood. The wolf's eyes seemed to look back at me, patient and knowing. The door opened again, and I hastily tucked the pendant away. But it wasn't the beta returning. It was him. King Kieran Silverclaw filled the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the light from the corridor beyond. In the confines of the small room, his presence was overwhelming, a force of nature contained in human form. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with midnight black hair that fell to his shoulders and a jawline that could cut glass. A scar ran from his right temple to his cheekbone, a pale line against his tanned skin. Those amber eyes assessed me coldly, methodically, as if I were a puzzle to be solved or a threat to be neutralized. I lowered my gaze, remembering my place. Look at me, he commanded. I hesitated, years of conditioning warring with his direct order. I said, look at me. His voice had dropped an octave, laced with the power of an alpha command that my body couldn't ignore. I raised my eyes to his, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to submit, to bare my neck. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, that I could resist even partially. Then his expression hardened again. Do you know who I am? He asked. Yes, Your Majesty, I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. You're the man who killed my father. I regretted the words as soon as they left my lips. Stupid, stupid girl. But instead of anger, I saw something else flash in his eyes, a grim satisfaction. Good, he said. At least there will be no illusions between us. He stepped closer, and I pressed myself harder against the wall. He towered over me, his scent enveloping me, pine forests after rain, smoke from a distant fire, and something uniquely him, wild and untamed. My wolf responded instinctively, a warmth spreading through my core that horrified the human part of me. I have specific reasons for purchasing you, Lyra Blackwood, he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was tasting it. Reasons you'll understand soon enough. He reached out, and I flinched. His jaw tightened, but he continued the motion, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. You're afraid of me, he observed. Wouldn't you be? I countered, immediately biting my tongue. What was wrong with me? Did I have a death wish? To my shock, a smile curved one corner of his mouth. Predatory, but genuine. Most people are, he agreed. But you're afraid, and yet you challenge me. Interesting. Before I could respond, the door opened again, and a tall beta male entered, his military bearing marking him as someone of importance. The carriage is ready, Your Majesty, he announced, giving me a curious glance. Kieran nodded. We leave immediately for the palace. My heart jumped into my throat. The palace, the seat of power in the 7 territories, nestled high in the Silver Mountains, a place few ever saw and even fewer left. "Come," Kieran said, extending his hand to me. I stared at it, then at him, seeing the challenge in his eyes. This was a test, the first of many, I suspected. With a deep breath, I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, a cage I had willingly entered. As he led me from the auction house into the rainy night, whispers followed us like shadows. The rejected, disgraced daughter of a traitor, claimed by the Alpha King himself. I could almost hear the speculation, the conspiracy theories forming, but none could be as terrifying as the question echoing in my own mind. What did the man who destroyed everything I loved want with me? The rain soaked through my thin gown as he guided me toward a black carriage, its doors emblazoned with the royal crest, a silver wolf howling beneath a crown. Just before I stepped inside, a gust of wind brought a new scent to my nostrils, something familiar, yet impossible. I turned, scanning the crowded street, but saw nothing unusual. Yet for a moment, I could have sworn I'd caught the scent of my long-dead mother. The carriage interior was lined with plush velvet, the color of dried blood. I sat across from Kieran, keeping my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The beta, who had announced the carriage, Commander Thorne, as Kieran had called him, rode up front with the driver, leaving us alone in the confined space. Outside, the city of Lunaris slipped away, its glittering lights fading into the mist. I'd never been this far from the Northern Territories before. My world had been the training facility for the past year, and before that, the crumbling remains of our pack house after my father's execution. Now I was being taken even further from everything familiar, deep into the heart of the kingdom that had destroyed my family. "You're shivering," Kieran observed, his voice startling me from my thoughts. I hadn't realized how cold I was, my wet gown clinging to my skin, my hair dripping onto my shoulders. "I'm fine," I lied, a reflex born from years of hiding weakness. Kieran's eyes narrowed. Without a word, he shrugged off his black cloak, a heavy thing lined with fur, and leaned forward to drape it around my shoulders. I stiffened at his proximity, his scent surrounding me as completely as the fabric. "Thank you," I whispered, the politeness ingrained by Madame Oleander winning out over my instinct to reject anything from him. "Don't thank me yet," he replied, settling back into his seat. "I didn't buy you out of charity, Lyra." The way he said my name, like he was claiming it, sent an involuntary shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Why did you buy me then?" I asked, finding courage in my desperation to understand. "Is this about my father? Some final revenge?" The carriage hit a rough patch in the road, jostling us. Kieran remained perfectly still, as if his body were anchored to the earth itself. "Your father was a small man with large ambitions," he said after a moment. "His rebellion was crushed 5 years ago. I don't waste time on vengeance against the dead." "Then why?" Moonlight filtered through the carriage window, catching on the scar on his face, making it appear silver against his skin. "Because of who your mother was." My breath caught. No one ever spoke of my mother. She had died when I was born, and my father had forbidden any mention of her. The wooden pendant was all I had of her. That, and a vague sense that she was somehow the source of my father's bitterness. "What about my mother?" I asked, leaning forward despite myself. Kieran studied me, as if measuring how much to reveal. "That's a conversation for when we're behind the walls of the palace. These roads have ears." Frustration bubbled up inside me. "You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want." He cut me off, his voice soft but lined with steel. "I am the king, and you are now mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have repulsed me. Instead, something deep inside, the wolf part of me that operated on instinct rather than reason, responded to it, a warmth spreading through my center that made me want to look away in shame. The rest of the journey passed in tense silence. I wrapped myself tighter in his cloak, inhaling his scent with each breath, hating myself for finding comfort in it. The road wound upward into the mountains, each turn taking us higher, the air growing thinner and colder. Through the window, I caught glimpses of the vast forest below, a sea of dark green that stretched to the horizon. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the carriage slowed. I peered outside and gasped. The royal palace of the Silver Mountains rose before us, a sprawling structure of pale stone and glass that seemed to grow from the mountainside itself. Towers spiraled into the night sky, their windows glowing with warm light. A massive wall surrounded the grounds, patrolled by guards whose silhouettes were visible against the moonlight. "Welcome to your new home," Kieran said, watching my reaction carefully. Home. The word felt like a mockery. This place, this fortress, would be my prison. The carriage stopped before an arched gateway. Commander Thorne opened the door, standing at attention as Kieran stepped out. When I hesitated, Kieran extended his hand to me once again. This time, I took it without thinking, allowing him to help me down. The night air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Guards lined the pathway, their faces impassive as we passed. I clutched Kieran's cloak around me, acutely aware of my bedraggled appearance. "Your Majesty," a stern-looking woman greeted us at the palace entrance, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Plans changed, Mrs. Holloway," Kieran replied. "This is Lyra. She'll be staying in the East Wing. Have a bath prepared for her and find her suitable clothing." Mrs. Holloway's eyes flicked to me, a flash of surprise quickly masked by professional indifference. "Of course, Your Majesty. Shall I show her to her quarters?" "I'll do it myself," Kieran said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Mrs. Holloway bowed and retreated, but not before I caught the disapproval in her eyes. I didn't blame her. What was the housekeeper supposed to think when the king arrived with a bedraggled woman from an auction? Kieran led me through a maze of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Marble floors, tapestries depicting battles and hunts, chandeliers dripping with crystals. Guards stood at regular intervals, their eyes following us as we passed. Or rather, following me. "They're curious," Kieran said, noticing my discomfort. "It's not every day I bring someone to the private quarters." "What exactly am I to you?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "A servant? A prisoner?" Kieran stopped before a set of double doors carved with intricate wolf designs. "You are whatever I need you to be," he answered cryptically, pushing the doors open. The room beyond was larger than the entire cottage where I'd grown up. A four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in midnight blue silk. A sitting area with plush chairs faced a fireplace where flames already danced. One wall was entirely glass, offering a breathtaking view of the mountains and the forest below. "This is... for me?" I asked incredulously. "For now," Kieran said. "The bathroom is through there. Mrs. Holloway will send someone with clothes. I'll return in 2 hours. Be ready." "Ready for what?" He regarded me with those amber eyes that seemed to see too much. "Dinner. Just you and me, and answers to some of your questions." He turned to leave, then paused. "Keep my cloak. It suits you." Then he was gone, the doors closing behind him with a soft click. Alone, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. The pendant at my throat felt heavy, and I pulled it out, studying the wooden wolf. What secrets had my mother taken to her grave? And why did the Alpha King believe they mattered now, 5 years after my father's failed rebellion? The bath was a luxury I hadn't experienced in years, hot water scented with lavender, soap that left my skin feeling like silk. I scrubbed away the auction house, the fear, the humiliation. But I couldn't wash away the confusion or the strange pull I felt toward Kieran. As promised, clothes appeared, delivered by a shy beta girl who wouldn't meet my eyes. The dress was simple, but elegant, deep green velvet that complemented my pale skin and dark hair. It fit perfectly, as if made for me. The thought was unsettling. I was braiding my damp hair when a knock came at the door. My heart jumped to my throat, but it wasn't Kieran, just Mrs. Holloway, her expression still disapproving. "His Majesty awaits you in his private dining room," she announced. "Follow me." We traversed more corridors, climbing a spiral staircase to a tower that offered views in all directions. The dining room was intimate, just a small table set for 2, candles providing most of the light. And there was Kieran, standing by the window, his profile sharp against the night sky. He'd changed as well, into a simple black shirt and trousers that did nothing to diminish his regal bearing. When he turned to me, something flickered in his eyes, appreciation, perhaps, or surprise. "Leave us," he told Mrs. Holloway, who bowed and departed without a word. "Sit," he said to me, gesturing to the table. I obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. Kieran took the seat opposite, his movements fluid and controlled. "Wine?" he offered, reaching for a crystal decanter. "I want answers more than wine," I replied, then winced at my boldness. To my surprise, Kieran smiled. A real smile that transformed his face, softening the hard edges. "You're not what I expected, Lyra Blackwood." "What did you expect? A broken girl too terrified to speak?" "Most people are terrified of me," he pointed out, pouring wine into my glass despite my protest. "Yet here you are, demanding answers as if you have the right to them." "You brought me here," I countered. "You bought me like cattle at market, dragged me to your palace, and dangled the mystery of my mother before me. I think that earns me a few answers." Kieran leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "Your mother," he began, swirling the wine in his glass, "was Celine Moonshade." The name meant nothing to me, and my confusion must have shown on my face. "You don't recognize the name," Kieran observed. "Your father truly told you nothing." "He never spoke of her," I admitted. "Only that she died giving birth to me." Kieran's expression darkened. "That's a lie. Your mother didn't die in childbirth. She was murdered when you were 3 months old." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. "Murdered? By whom?" "That," Kieran said grimly, "is what I intend to find out. With your help." "My help? How could I possibly help? I don't remember her." "You carry her blood," he replied, "and her gift." I frowned. "What gift?" Kieran set down his glass and leaned forward, his eyes intent on mine. Celine Moonshade was the last known moon seer in the 7 territories. She could read the future in the patterns of the moon, communicate with the spirits of our ancestors, find what was lost. It's a rare ability, passed only through the female line. Your father married her for that power, then had her killed when she refused to use it to help his political ambitions. I shook my head, denying his words even as a cold certainty settled in my stomach. "You're lying. My father wouldn't—" "Your father," Kieran cut in, "was a cruel and ambitious man who saw people as tools, including his own wife and daughter. If what you say is true, why didn't he kill me too? Because the gift doesn't manifest until a woman's 23rd year. You were no use to him yet. And after I crushed his rebellion, you were no use to anyone, until now." I stared at him, pieces falling into place. "My 23rd birthday is in 3 days. Kieran nodded, a predatory satisfaction in his eyes. "And the blood moon rises on the same night. The perfect conditions for your gift to emerge. So that's why you bought me?" I whispered, the brief, foolish hope that had begun to form withering like frost-touched leaves. "You want to use my gift the same way my father supposedly wanted to." "Not the same way," Kieran corrected sharply. "Your father wanted power for himself. I want justice for my people, and for your mother." I pushed back from the table, standing on shaky legs. "How did you know my mother? Why do you care about justice for her?" Kieran rose as well, his height and presence seeming to fill the room. "Because Celine Moonshade was my father's sister. Your mother was my aunt, Lyra. Which makes you my cousin." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the table for support, my mind racing to make sense of this new reality. If what he said was true, I wasn't just the daughter of a traitor. I was royal blood, family to the very man who had executed my father. "I don't believe you," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my uncertainty. Kieran moved around the table toward me, and I backed away until I hit the wall. He didn't stop until he was right before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Look at me, Lyra," he commanded softly. "Really look. We have the same eyes." I did as he asked, staring into those amber depths that had seemed so familiar from the first moment I saw them. The same unusual color as my own, a trait that had always set me apart. "If we're family," I whispered, Why did you buy me like a slave? Why not just find me?" Something like regret flashed across his face. "I only learned of your existence a month ago. By then, you were already slated for the auction. It was the cleanest way to get you out without raising suspicions." "Suspicions from whom?" Kieran's jaw tightened. "There are forces in this kingdom that don't want a moonseer to emerge again. The same forces that may have been behind your mother's murder. I needed to bring you here quietly, secretly. So I'm in danger," I concluded. "We both are," Kieran corrected. "But here, within these walls, you're as safe as I can make you. Until the blood moon rises and your gift awakens." His face was inches from mine now, his gaze intense. Despite the shocking revelation of our kinship, something electric still crackled in the air between us, something that had nothing to do with family ties. "And if this gift doesn't awaken?" I asked. "What then?" Kieran's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It will. I've waited too long for this moment, Lyra. You will help me find your mother's killer, and together, we will reshape this kingdom." His certainty was terrifying. But even more terrifying was the part of me that wanted to surrender to it, to trust this man who was both my blood and a stranger. "And if I refuse?" I challenged, lifting my chin. Kieran raised his hand, and I flinched, expecting violence. Instead, his fingers gently touched the wooden pendant at my throat. "Your mother made this," he said quietly. "It was her final gift to you. She knew what you would become. She knew you would find your way back to your true family someday." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Believe this," Kieran said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I will protect you with my life, not just because you're my blood, but because you may be the key to saving us all." Before I could ask what he meant, a sharp knock came at the door. Kieran stepped back, his expression shifting back to that of the cold, controlled Alpha King. "Enter," he called. Commander Thorne appeared, his face grim. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. There's been an incident at the northern border. A patrol was attacked. There are no survivors." Kieran's entire demeanor changed, tension radiating from him like heat. "When?" "An hour ago. The bodies were arranged, sir, in the same pattern as the others." Kieran cursed under his breath. "Assemble the council. I'll join you shortly." As Thorne retreated, Kieran turned back to me. "I must go. Stay in your room tonight. Lock the door. Trust no one until I return." "What's happening?" I asked, fear creeping back into my voice. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw genuine worry there. "The danger I spoke of is closer than I thought. 3 days, Lyra. We have 3 days until the blood moon. Until then, you must stay hidden, stay safe." He moved to leave, then paused, turning back to me. Before I could react, he pressed something cold and metallic into my palm. A small key on a silver chain. "This unlocks the hidden compartment in the nightstand by your bed," he explained quickly. "Inside is your mother's journal. Read it. Understand who you are before the moon rises." Then he was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers, a key that felt impossibly heavy in my hand, and the terrifying sense that I was caught in currents far deeper and more dangerous than I could possibly imagine. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with revelations about my mother, my heritage, and the supposed gift that would soon awaken within me. The journal Kieran had directed me to was bound in faded blue leather, its pages yellowed with age. My mother's handwriting was delicate yet decisive, filling page after page with observations about the moon cycles, sketches of strange symbols, and cryptic references to visions she'd experienced. Most entries were dated from before my birth, chronicling her arranged marriage to my father and her growing disillusionment as she discovered his true nature. The final entry was dated just 2 days before her alleged murder. "The moon has shown me shadows gathering. He suspects I've seen his plans. I've hidden the grimoire where only blood of my blood will find it. My daughter will carry the gift, stronger than mine. Kieran must protect her when the time comes. The prophecy depends on it." "Prophecy? What prophecy?" The journal offered no clear explanation, only fragments that hinted at some great calamity my mother had foreseen. Dawn found me still awake, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold from my window seat. The palace was stirring to life, servants moving through the corridors, guards changing shifts. I hadn't seen Kieran since he'd been called away the previous night. A soft knock at my door startled me. I approached cautiously, remembering Kieran's warning to trust no one. "Who is it?" I called. "Ilara, my lady. Mrs. Holloway sent me to attend to you." I cracked the door open to find a young woman with copper hair and kind eyes. She carried a tray of food and a bundle of clothing. "I'm not a lady," I corrected her, opening the door wider. Ilara's smile was gentle as she entered. "According to Mrs. Holloway, you're the king's cousin, which makes you Lady Lyra." News traveled fast. "Does everyone know that?" "Only the senior staff," she assured me, setting down the tray. His Majesty was very clear about discretion. I picked at the breakfast she'd brought: fresh bread, honey, berries, and tea. "Have you seen the king this morning?" "He returned just before dawn," Ilara said, laying out the clothes she'd brought. A simple day dress in soft blue, practical boots, and a warm cloak. "He asked that you be ready by midday. He intends to show you the grounds." Show me the grounds? After all his warnings about danger and staying hidden, that seemed strange. Still, I was eager to see him again, to demand more answers about this prophecy my mother had mentioned. Ilara helped me dress, then arranged my hair in a simple style. As she worked, she filled the silence with palace gossip. Which cook was feuding with which footman? How the head gardener insisted on talking to the roses. Normal, mundane matters that made this extraordinary place seem almost ordinary. "There," she said, stepping back to admire her work. "You look lovely, my lady." I studied my reflection in the mirror. The girl looking back at me seemed different somehow. Less haunted, perhaps. Or simply better fed and clothed than I'd been in years. "Thank you, Ilara," I said sincerely. She beamed at me. "I'll come fetch you when His Majesty is ready." Left alone again, I returned to my mother's journal, searching for any mention of this prophecy. But the earlier entries were mostly personal reflections or detailed observations of the moon's phases. One page caught my attention, a sketch of a pendant identical to the wooden wolf I wore around my neck, alongside strange symbols I couldn't decipher. I was tracing these symbols with my fingertip when another knock came at my door. This time, it was Commander Thorne. "Lady Lyra," he greeted me formally, though his eyes held a wariness that made me uncomfortable. "The king awaits you in the western courtyard." I followed him through the palace, noting how the guards stiffened as we passed, their expressions carefully blank. Something had changed since last night. Some shift in the palace's atmosphere that I couldn't quite define. The western courtyard was a peaceful space, with a central fountain surrounded by stone benches and flowering shrubs. Kieran stood with his back to us, hands clasped behind him, staring at the water. He'd clearly not slept. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and a new tension lined his shoulders. "Leave us," he told Thorne without turning around. When we were alone, I approached him cautiously. "You wanted to see me?" Kieran's gaze finally shifted to me, assessing. "You read the journal." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. It raised more questions than it answered. "Walk with me," he said, offering his arm. I hesitated before taking it, acutely aware of the strength coiled in his frame. He led me along a stone path that wound through the courtyard and into a small garden sheltered by tall hedges. "The border patrol that was attacked," he began, his voice low. "It's the third such incident in 2 months. Always the same pattern. Bodies arranged in a ritual circle, drained of blood." I shuddered. "What does that have to do with me? With my mother's journal?" Kieran stopped beside a stone bench and motioned for me to sit. He remained standing, too restless to be still. "Celine wrote of a prophecy," he said. "A time when the barrier between our world and the spirit realm would weaken, allowing ancient powers to return. She believed this would happen during a blood moon that coincided with the emergence of a new moonseer. Me?" I whispered. He nodded grimly. "The attacks began exactly 23 years after your birth. As if something was marking time, counting down to your awakening. Fear crawled up my spine. You think whatever killed those patrols is connected to this prophecy? To me? I think," Kieran said carefully, "that there are forces that want to either control your power or prevent it from awakening entirely. My father, was likely working with these forces, Kieran finished. But I don't believe he was their leader. Someone else has been pulling strings from the shadows for decades. The sun disappeared behind a cloud, casting the garden in shadow. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. Last night, Kieran continued, I received intelligence that suggests a traitor in my court. Someone who knows about you and has informed others of your presence here. My blood ran cold. So I'm not safe, even in the palace. You're safe with me, Kieran said with absolute certainty. But we need to accelerate our plans. The blood moon is still 3 days away, but I believe your gift may already be stirring. What makes you think that? Kieran knelt before me, bringing his face level with mine. You've been having dreams, haven't you? Strange visions when you look at the moon? I stared at him in shock. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams that had started on my 22nd birthday. Fragmented images of blood on snow, a crown of thorns, wolves running beneath a crimson moon, or how, sometimes when I gazed at the night sky, the moon seemed to whisper to me in a voice that felt like memory. How did you know? I breathed. Because Celine experienced the same, he explained. The gift begins to manifest slowly in the year before it fully awakens. Small signs, easily dismissed as imagination or coincidence. He took my hands in his, and I was struck again by how warm his skin was against mine. I need you to tell me about these dreams, Lyra. Every detail you can remember. Something in his intensity made me pull back slightly. Why are you really doing this, Kieran? It can't just be about solving my mother's murder or some vague prophecy. What do you want from me? Pain flashed across his features, quickly masked. Your mother was more than my aunt, he said after a long moment. She was my teacher, my protector. After my own mother died, Celine raised me as her own until my 10th year, when your father took her away to the Northern Territories. She wrote to me in secret for years, teaching me through her letters. When she was killed, a part of me died with her. The raw emotion in his voice caught me off guard. This was not the calculated political maneuver I had suspected, but something deeply personal. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't know. How could you? He released my hands and stood, turning away. Your father made sure you knew nothing of your heritage, nothing of your power. He raised you to be small, to be afraid. And now you want to use that power, just like he did, I challenged, though with less conviction than before. Kieran whirled back to face me, eyes flashing. I want to fulfill a promise I made to Celine before she was taken from me. I promised to find you, to protect you, to help you become what you were born to be. And what's that? I asked, rising to my feet. A moon seer, he replied. Perhaps the most powerful one in generations, and the key to defeating an ancient evil that has haunted our kind since the first wolf shifted under the moon. Before I could respond, a bell began tolling somewhere in the palace. 3 sharp peals followed by silence, then 3 more. Kieran's entire demeanor changed. That's the alarm, he said, grabbing my arm. We need to move. Now, he pulled me back toward the palace. His grip firm, but not painful. Guards were running along the corridors, weapons drawn. Servants pressed themselves against walls to avoid being trampled. What's happening? I gasped, as Kieran led me up a spiral staircase I hadn't seen before. We're under attack, he replied tersely. Someone has breached the outer wall. Fear shot through me. The people who killed the patrols? Most likely. We reached a heavy wooden door, which Kieran unlocked with a key from his pocket. This is my private study. No one can enter without my permission. You'll be safe here until I deal with this. The room beyond was circular, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk covered in maps and documents. A large window overlooked the mountains, offering a strategic view of the approach to the palace. I'm not staying here while you go fight whatever's out there, I protested. Kieran's expression hardened. Yes, you are. If something happens to you before your gift awakens, everything my aunt died for, everything I've worked for, will be lost. I'm not just some tool for your plans, I snapped, anger flaring through my fear. To my surprise, Kieran grabbed me by the shoulders, his face inches from mine. No, you're not. You're my blood, My family, the only family I have left, and I will not lose you too. The raw emotion in his voice silenced me. For all his power and control, in that moment, I glimpsed the wounded boy who had lost everyone he loved, his parents, my mother, and countless others in the wars that had plagued our lands. I'll stay, I conceded, but promise you'll come back. Something shifted in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, that I cared whether he returned. I promise, he said, his voice softening. Bar the door behind me. Open it for no one but me. He turned to leave, then hesitated. From inside his shirt, he pulled a dagger with a silver hilt carved with runes. Take this. Use it if you must. I accepted the weapon, feeling its weight in my palm. I don't know how to fight. Yes, you do, Kieran said with surprising confidence. It's in your blood. Trust your instincts. Then he was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. I slid the heavy bolt into place as instructed, then moved to the window, watching as guards assembled in the courtyard below. Whatever was attacking remained out of sight, beyond the outer wall. The dagger felt strange yet familiar in my hand, like a long-forgotten friend. I traced the runes etched into its hilt, and to my shock, they began to glow faintly blue beneath my touch. Trust your instincts, I murmured, repeating Kieran's words. I closed my eyes, focusing on the weight of the dagger, the cool metal against my skin. Something stirred within me, not my wolf, which always felt wild and primal, but something older, calmer. A stillness at my center that I'd never noticed before. The pendant at my throat grew warm. When I opened my eyes, the wooden wolf was glowing with the same blue light as the dagger. A memory surfaced, not mine, but somehow inside me nonetheless. A woman's hands showing a young girl how to hold a similar dagger. Her voice gentle but firm. The blade is an extension of your will. Feel the connection. I adjusted my grip as the memory instructed, and the blue glow intensified. Suddenly, I could sense presences beyond the walls of the study. Dozens of guards, servants huddled in fear, and Kieran, a bright flame of power moving purposefully through the palace, and something else, darker, colder, slithering over the outer wall like shadow given form. Not one presence, but many, moving with unnatural coordination, their intent malevolent. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding. This wasn't normal. Werewolves couldn't sense others at such distances, couldn't feel intentions so clearly. Was this the gift Kieran had spoken of? Was it awakening already? A commotion outside drew my attention back to the window. The courtyard had erupted into chaos, guards clashing with dark-robed figures whose movements were too fluid, too fast to be natural, and at their center, a tall figure in a bone-white mask directed the attack like a conductor before an orchestra. I strained to see Kieran among the defenders, but couldn't spot him. Fear clutched at my throat, despite everything. The secrets, the manipulation, the unanswered questions. I couldn't bear the thought of him falling to these shadowy attackers. A sudden sound behind me made me whirl around, dagger raised. The bookshelf on the far wall was moving? No, not moving, changing. The books seemed to blur, their colors running together like wet paint, revealing a doorway where solid wood had been moments before. I backed away, heart hammering against my ribs. No one had entered. The bolt was still in place, yet the secret door swung open, as if pushed by invisible hands. Beyond it lay darkness, but as I watched, small blue lights appeared, forming a path that led deeper into the hidden passage, the same blue as the glowing dagger in my hand, as the pendant at my throat. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap. Yet something deeper than instinct, that new stillness at my core, whispered that this was meant for me, had always been meant for me. Trust your instincts, I repeated, the dagger warm in my palm. Taking a deep breath, I stepped through the doorway into the passage beyond. The blue lights hovered at eye level, guiding me forward. The door closed silently behind me, sealing me in darkness, broken only by the ethereal glow. The passage sloped downward, deep into the mountain beneath the palace. The air grew cooler, damper, heavy with the scent of earth and stone. I lost track of time as I descended, following the floating lights that seemed to respond to my presence, brightening when I hesitated, as if encouraging me onward. Finally, The passage opened into a circular chamber carved from the living rock. At its center stood a stone altar, and upon it a book bound in silver and moonstone, its cover emblazoned with the same wolf symbol as my pendant, the grimoire my mother had mentioned in her journal. I approached slowly, the blue lights clustering around the altar like curious spirits. The dagger in my hand pulsed with energy, drawing me forward until I stood before the ancient tome. Words appeared on the previously blank cover, written in a script I'd never seen before, yet somehow understood. Only blood of my blood may open these pages. Only a daughter of the moon may read these words. Understanding what was required, I pressed the tip of the dagger to my palm and made a small cut. Blood welled from the wound, and I let it drip onto the cover of the grimoire. The effect was immediate. The book flew open, its pages turning of their own accord, faster and faster until they became a blur. Light erupted from it, not the gentle blue of the guiding spirits, but a brilliant silver that filled the chamber, blinding me. When my vision cleared, a figure stood before me, translucent, glowing with that same silver light. A woman with my eyes, my face, but older, wiser, marked by sorrow and strength in equal measure. "Mother?" I whispered, my voice breaking. The spectral figure smiled. "My daughter, my Lyra, how you've grown." I reached for her, but my hand passed through her form like mist. "How is this possible? The blood moon approaches, thinning the veil between worlds," she explained, her voice echoing strangely in the chamber. "I've waited so long to speak with you, to prepare you." "Prepare me for what?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "For what you must become," she replied. "For the battle that approaches, for the choice you must make when the moon turns red." Kieran said something about a prophecy. I pressed. "About ancient powers returning," my mother's spirit nodded gravely. "The blood cult has risen again. They seek to open a doorway during the blood moon, to allow the great shadow to enter our world once more. Only a moonseer can prevent this, by either sealing the doorway forever or becoming its guardian." "I don't understand," I said, frustration mounting. "What is this great shadow? What does it want?" "To consume," she answered simply. "To devour our world as it has devoured countless others. It feeds on life, on souls, on the very essence of what makes us who we are." Cold dread settled in my stomach. "And I'm supposed to stop this. How?" My mother's spirit drifted closer. "The grimoire contains the ritual, but be warned, it requires sacrifice. The question you must answer is what you are willing to give up to save everything else." Before I could ask what sacrifice the ritual demanded, a distant sound reached us, the clash of metal, shouts of pain and rage. The battle had reached the palace proper. My mother's form flickered. "Our time grows short. The one in the bone mask. He leads the blood cult now. He was your father's master, and now he comes for you. Trust Kieran. Despite everything, he is true of heart." "Wait!" I cried as her image began to fade. "How do I use this power? How do I awaken it fully?" Her voice came as if from a great distance. "The gift is already within you, daughter. It awakens with your need, grows with your courage. Look to the moon, even when it is hidden. Listen to its song, and remember, the greatest power comes from love freely given, not taken by force." Then she was gone, leaving me alone in the chamber with the grimoire and more questions than answers. I approached the book cautiously. Its pages had settled on what appeared to be a ritual description. Complex diagrams surrounding text in that same strange script I somehow understood. It described the approaching blood moon, the thinning of the veil, and the ritual to either seal or guard the doorway between worlds. And there, at the bottom of the page, was the sacrifice required. The blood of the guilty must be spilled by the hand of the innocent. A life for a life. A soul for a soul. A chill ran through me. Was I expected to kill someone, to become an executioner in order to save the world? The sounds of fighting grew louder. I had to return to the palace, to find Kieran, to warn him about the man in the bone mask. I gathered the grimoire in my arms, surprisingly light for its size, and turned back toward the passage. The blue lights reappeared, guiding me upward this time. I moved as quickly as I dared, the dagger still clutched in one hand, the ancient book secured against my chest with the other. As I neared the end of the passage, A scream of pain echoed from beyond, a voice I recognized with horrible certainty. Kieran. I burst through the hidden doorway back into Kieran's study, the grimoire clutched tightly to my chest. The room was in chaos, furniture overturned, papers scattered, the large window shattered. Through the broken glass, I could see the battle still raging in the courtyard below. And there, in the center of the destruction, was Kieran, on his knees, blood streaming from a wound in his side, his face contorted with pain. Standing over him was the figure in the bone-white mask, a curved blade pressed to Kieran's throat. "The Moonseer approaches," the masked figure said, his voice like dry leaves rustling. He didn't turn to look at me, yet somehow knew I was there, right on time, carrying her mother's grimoire. How predictable the patterns of fate. I froze, fear and rage warring within me. The dagger in my hand suddenly felt inadequate against this creature who had subdued even Kieran. "Let him go," I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. The masked figure laughed, a sound like stones grinding against each other. Bold words from a girl who doesn't yet understand her own power. He pressed the blade harder against Kieran's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "Drop the dagger and bring me the grimoire, or watch your king die." Kieran's eyes met mine, fierce despite his pain. "Don't," he growled. "Run, Lyra. Get out of the palace. Find Thorn." The masked figure tisked. Such nobility. It must run in the family. He turned his face toward me, and though I couldn't see his eyes behind the mask, I felt his gaze like ice across my skin. "But he's lying to you, little seer. He doesn't want you to escape. He wants your power for himself, just as your father did." "Don't listen to him," Kieran snarled, struggling against his captor's hold. I clutched the grimoire tighter, my mind racing. The pendant at my throat still glowed with that strange blue light, as did the dagger in my hand. Something about them resonated with each other, with the grimoire, and with something deep inside me. "The gift is already within you. It awakens with your need, grows with your courage," my mother's words echoed in my mind. This was the moment of need, the test of courage. But what was I supposed to do? "I'm growing impatient," the masked figure said. "The grimoire, girl, now." "Who are you?" I asked, stalling for time, trying desperately to think. A chuckle emerged from behind the mask. "I've had many names through many ages. Your mother knew me as Lord Vraken. Your father called me Master. The ancient texts name me Shadowbinder. He leads the blood cult," Kieran managed through gritted teeth. "He's been orchestrating everything from the shadows for decades. My father's assassination, your mother's murder, your father's rebellion." Lord Vraken pressed his blade deeper, silencing Kieran. "Enough history. The grimoire, or he dies." I looked at the ancient book in my arms, then at Kieran's bloodied form. My mother had said to trust him, that he was true of heart, despite everything. And in that moment, facing this ancient evil, I chose to believe her. "If I give you the grimoire," I said carefully, "you'll let him go?" Vraken nodded. "You have my word." Lies. I could sense them now, could feel the malevolence radiating from him like a physical force, but I pretended to consider his offer, slowly stepping forward. "Lyra, don't," Kieran began, only to be silenced by a brutal blow to his temple. Rage flared within me at the sight of his blood, at his slumped form barely conscious at Vraken's feet. The pendant burned against my skin, and the dagger's blue glow intensified, spreading up my arm like flame. "Look to the moon, even when it is hidden." Through the shattered window I could see the afternoon sky, the moon invisible in daylight. Yet somehow I could feel it there, could sense its position as clearly as if it were full and bright before me. I closed my eyes, reaching out with that new sense, connecting to the moon's distant presence. Power surged through me, raw, ancient, and mine by birthright. The grimoire in my arms began to glow with the same blue light as the dagger and pendant, its pages turning of their own accord. When I opened my eyes, the world had changed. I could see patterns of energy flowing through everything, through the stone walls, through Kieran's wounded body, through Lord Vraken's masked form. And in Vraken, I saw something horrifying, a swirling darkness where his heart should be. Tendrils of shadow extending outward, seeking, hungry. "You're not human," I whispered. "You're not even werewolf." Vraken cocked his head. "Very good, little seer. Your gift awakens early, just as I planned." "What are you?" "A servant of the Great Shadow," he replied. "A fragment of its consciousness, sent ahead to prepare for its arrival. For centuries, I have worked toward the moment when the veil would thin enough for my master to cross over. The blood moon in 3 days will provide that opportunity if I have the grimoire and the blood of a moon seer." Understanding dawned, terrible and clear. "You need my blood to open the doorway." "Precisely." Vraken's free hand extended toward me. "Now, be a good girl and give me the book. I promised to make your death quick, but I wasn't listening anymore. My attention had shifted to the patterns of energy around us, to the connections between the dagger, the pendant, and the grimoire. Together, they formed a circuit of power, and I was the conduit. The grimoire's pages settled on the ritual I'd seen in the hidden chamber, but now I understood it differently. The sacrifice required, the blood of the guilty spilled by the hand of the innocent, wasn't about murder. It was about justice. In that moment of clarity, I knew what I had to do. "I'll give you what you want," I said, stepping closer, the grimoire held out before me. Vraken's posture relaxed slightly. A tiny victory. I approached until I stood just beyond his reach, the book extended between us. "Take it," I urged. As he reached for the grimoire with his free hand, I made my move. With speed I didn't know I possessed. I dropped the book and lunged forward with the dagger, not at Vraken, but at the blade he held to Kieran's throat. The blue energy surrounding my weapon flared on contact with his, sending a pulse of power that knocked the curved blade from his grasp. Kieran, despite his injuries, reacted instantly. He surged upward, tackling Vraken around the waist, sending them both crashing to the floor. "The grimoire!" Kieran shouted as they grappled. I snatched up the ancient book, backing away as Kieran and Vraken fought. But Vraken was impossibly strong. He threw Kieran off with supernatural force, sending him crashing into the wall. Then he turned to me, reaching up to remove his mask at last. What lay beneath wasn't a face at all, just a swirling void in the vague shape of human features, darkness where eyes should be, a mouth that was a tear in reality itself. "Enough games," the void face said, voice echoing as if from a great distance. "The time for subtlety is past." He lunged at me with inhuman speed, hands extended like claws. I raised the dagger defensively, but I knew it wouldn't be enough to stop him. Then Kieran was there, throwing himself between us, taking the full force of Vraken's attack. They fell together in a tangle of limbs, Kieran's blood spattering the floor as Vraken's shadow claws tore into him. "Run!" Kieran gasped, struggling to hold the creature back. "Get to the sanctuary beneath the East Tower. Complete the ritual." I hesitated, unable to leave him to die. "Go!" he roared, his eyes flashing with alpha command. "This is bigger than either of us!" With a sob tearing from my throat, I clutched the grimoire and fled through the study door, out into the corridor beyond. The palace was in chaos, guards fighting robed cultists, servants running for safety, smoke billowing from parts of the structure that had been set ablaze. I ran blindly at first, then remembered Kieran's words, the East Tower. I changed direction, letting instinct guide me through the unfamiliar corridors. The pendant at my throat pulsed with blue light, growing brighter when I turned in the right direction, dimming when I strayed from the path. Behind me, I heard an inhuman howl of rage. Vraken, discovering I had escaped. The sound chilled my blood, spurring me to greater speed. Guards and cultists alike seemed not to notice me as I passed, as if the blue glow surrounding me rendered me invisible to their eyes. I reached the East Tower, finding a spiral staircase that led both up to the tower's peak and down below ground level. Following the pendant's guidance, I descended. The lower level opened into a circular chamber, much like the one beneath Kieran's study, but larger, more elaborate. At its center stood a raised dais of white marble, upon which was carved a perfect replica of the moon in all its phases. I approached the dais, the grimoire growing heavier in my arms with each step. The book flew open once more, pages turning until they revealed the ritual in full detail. Now, with my awakening gift, I could understand it completely. The ritual required the blood of the guilty to seal the doorway, not as a murder, but as justice freely given. Blood spilled by the hand of the innocent, but offered willingly by the guilty. A sacrifice of atonement. But who was the guilty one meant to make this sacrifice? Lord Vraken? That seemed impossible. He would never willingly give his blood to seal his master out. Footsteps echoed on the stairs behind me. I whirled, dagger raised, expecting Vraken or his cultists. Instead, a bloodied but still standing Kieran stumbled into the chamber, one hand pressed to a wound in his chest, the other holding his side. Kieran. I ran to him, supporting his weight as he sagged against me. How did you escape him? I didn't, he gasped. Just bought time. He's coming. I helped him to the dais, where he collapsed onto the stone floor. The ritual, I said urgently. It needs the blood of the guilty, freely given. But Vraken would never— Not Vraken, Kieran interrupted, his breathing labored. Me. I stared at him in confusion. You? What are you guilty of? Pain crossed his features, not just physical pain, but something deeper, older. I knew what my father was planning against your mother. I could have warned her, saved her. But I was young, afraid. I said nothing, and she died because of my silence. Tears streamed down his face now, years of guilt breaking through his careful control. I've spent my life trying to atone, finding you, protecting you. It was all for her, all to make up for my failure. I knelt beside him, stunned by his confession. That's why you were so determined to solve her murder. Not just for justice, but for redemption. He nodded weakly. The ritual requires willing sacrifice from one who bears guilt. I've carried this guilt for 23 years, Lyra. Let me use it to save you, to save everyone. A terrible understanding dawned. The sacrifice. It's not just blood, is it? It's your life. Kieran's smile was sad but determined. A life for a life. A soul for a soul. It's fitting, don't you think? No, I protested, grabbing his hand. There must be another way. The ground beneath us trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. Vraken was coming, bringing destruction with him. There's no time, Kieran said urgently. The blood moon is 3 days away, but the veil is already thinning. If Vraken reaches us before the ritual is complete, all is lost. I looked at the grimoire, desperately searching for alternatives. But the ritual was clear. Willing sacrifice from the guilty, conducted by the innocent, to seal the doorway forever. I can't kill you, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Kieran reached up, his bloodied hand cupping my cheek. You won't be killing me. You'll be accepting my gift, my choice, my atonement. Our eyes met, the same unusual amber, our shared bloodline. In his gaze, I saw not just determination and pain, but something else that made my heart ache. Love. Not romantic love, but the deep, unbreakable bond of family, of shared blood and purpose. We just found each other, I said, my voice breaking. And in finding you, I found my redemption, he replied. This is my choice, Lyra. Honor it. The pendant at my throat flared brighter, and a voice that sounded like my mother's whispered in my mind. The greatest power comes from love, freely given, not taken by force. The trembling of the ground intensified. Cracks appeared in the walls. Time was running out. With shaking hands, I opened the grimoire to the ritual page. The words seemed to glow, burning themselves into my memory. I placed the book on the dais, then helped Kieran position himself at the center. On the carving of the full moon, the dagger. He prompted gently. It must be the dagger your mother gave you. I raised the blue glowing blade, tears falling freely now. I can't. Kieran's hand closed over mine on the hilt, his strength surprising despite his wounds. Together then. My choice. Your power. A crash echoed from the stairwell. Vraken, breaking through whatever barriers Kieran had left in his path. Now, Lyra, Kieran urged, begin the ritual. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then, with the grimoire's words guiding me, I began to chant in that ancient language that felt both foreign and familiar on my tongue. The blue light from the pendant and dagger expanded, forming a circle around us on the dais. As the chant continued, the carved phases of the moon began to glow one by one, matching the rhythm of the words. Kieran closed his eyes, his expression peaceful despite his pain. I, Kieran Silverclaw, offer my blood and life in atonement. He spoke when the ritual called for it, his voice growing stronger with purpose. I give this sacrifice freely, to seal what should never be opened, to protect what I once failed to save. The final crash announced Vraken's arrival. He burst into the chamber, his void face a swirling mass of fury, his robes torn from the fight with Kieran. "Stop!" he commanded, rushing toward the dais. But he couldn't cross the circle of blue light. He slammed against it as if against a physical wall, the impact sending him staggering backward. "It's too late, Vraken," Kieran said, a note of triumph in his pain-filled voice. "The doorway will be sealed. Your master will remain trapped beyond the veil." "Fools!" Vraken raged. "You think this ends with me? The Great Shadow has waited eons. It will find another way. Another servant. Another door." "Perhaps," I answered, continuing the ritual despite his threats. "But not today. Not through me." I raised the dagger higher, completing the chant. The blue circle intensified, becoming a dome of light over us. Kieran guided my hand, positioning the dagger over his heart. "Remember," he said softly, his eyes holding mine. "This is my gift to you, my choice." "I'll remember," my redemption. I promised, tears streaming down my face. Together, we plunged the dagger into his heart. Light exploded from the point of impact, not blue now, but pure silver, like moonlight distilled to its essence. It engulfed Kieran's body, transforming his blood from red to luminous silver as it flowed onto the carved moon beneath him. Vraken screamed, a sound of ancient rage and despair. The silver light expanded outward, washing over him. Where it touched his shadow form, it burned away the darkness, revealing glimpses of the human he had once been, eons ago, before the Great Shadow claimed him. "This isn't over," he shrieked as his form began to disintegrate. "The blood moon will come again. The shadow will find another way." Then he was gone, burned away by the purifying light, leaving only the bone-white mask clattering to the stone floor. I cradled Kieran in my arms as the light continued to flow from him, filling the chamber, reaching beyond it to cleanse the palace of Vraken's influence. The cultists above would be falling now, their connection to their master severed. "Is it done?" Kieran whispered, his voice fading. I nodded, unable to speak through my tears. He smiled, reaching up to touch my face one last time. Then it was worth it. His gaze drifted past me, focusing on something I couldn't see. "Celine," he murmured. I kept my promise. The light surrounding him began to dim, but the peace in his expression only deepened. "Take care of our people, Lyra. The kingdom is yours now." "I can't rule," I protested. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do," he insisted softly. "It's in your blood. Our blood." His hand fell away from my face, his strength failing. The Moonseers were the first rulers of our kind before the Alphas. "You're returning to the old ways, the true ways." His breathing grew shallower, his heartbeat slowing beneath my hand. "I'm glad," he whispered, "that it was you who found me in the end." Then Kieran Silverclaw, Alpha King of the 7 territories, closed his eyes for the final time, a smile of peace on his lips. I held him as the silver light faded, as the blue glow of the ritual circle diminished to a soft shimmer. Grief overwhelmed me, for the cousin I had just found and lost, for the years we would never share, for all the questions that would remain forever unanswered. Yet mingled with that grief was a strange sense of completion. Kieran had found his redemption. My mother's murder had been avenged. The doorway to the Great Shadow had been sealed, at least for this generation, and I had found my purpose. Commander Thorne found us an hour later, following the trail of silver light that had spread throughout the palace. He stopped at the entrance to the chamber, taking in the scene with a soldier's eyes. Kieran's body in my arms, the grimoire open beside us, the bone mask on the floor. "Your Majesty," he said, addressing me with a bow that acknowledged what had happened, what had changed. I looked up at him. My tears dried, my grief temporarily set aside by necessity. The cultists? Defeated, he reported. When the silver light came, they simply fell. Some died instantly. Others are being held for questioning. I nodded, gently laying Kieran's body on the stone dais. I closed his eyes, arranged his hands over his chest around the dagger that had taken his life and saved the kingdom. Prepare a royal funeral, I instructed, rising to my feet. King Kieran died saving us all. His sacrifice will be honored for generations to come. Thorn bowed again. And you, Your Majesty, what would you have us do now? I touched the pendant at my throat, no longer glowing, but forever changed, as was I. Assemble the council. There is much to be done. A new era begins today. As I followed Thorn from the chamber, I paused at the doorway, looking back at Kieran's peaceful form. The last of my father's line, the man who had bought me at auction when no one else wanted me, the cousin who had given his life to save mine. Thank you, I whispered. I won't waste your gift. 3 days later, I stood on the highest balcony of the palace, watching as the moon rose, full and blood-red, just as prophesied. But instead of opening a doorway to darkness, it shone down on a kingdom beginning to heal, on a people united by the sacrifice of their king and the emergence of a moonseer queen. I felt its power flow through me. Stronger now, clearer. The gift my mother had passed to me, that had awakened in my hour of need, would guide me in the days to come. I would learn to use it wisely, to protect rather than control, to heal rather than harm. And if Lord Vracken's final warning proved true, if the Great Shadow found another way, another time, I would be ready. Or my daughter would be, or her daughter after her. The line of moonseers would continue, guardians against the darkness that always sought to return. The blood moon bathed me in its crimson light, and for the first time since I stood trembling on that auction block, I felt truly free, no longer unwanted, no longer afraid. I was Lyra Moonshade Silverclaw, last of my mother's line, first of a new dynasty, the Moonseer Queen who had been bought by an Alpha King and found her true worth in the process. And my story was just beginning.